So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, refined in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. Then we find a layer of understanding of the spring feast, autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste from many centuries. And also we've learned then chapter 1:8, it is then obviously directly related with the 61st chapter, so then we can layer those understandings properly. So then the translator of the instructions did not understand the importance of layerings, but rather because a person had absolutely no understanding of times and the seasons, obviously did not have any understanding of the holy feasts of Leviticus the 23rd chapter, and therefore we find then chapter 1:8 very distant from chapter then 61. Obviously those chapters must be then gathered because those are layered properly when they are then next to each other. This means the entire scripture as we know of must be refurbished. Taka notes removed, Maasim removed, and then obviously then the layerings of these properly. So then, during this time of the nations then lining up themselves, we must then understand the importance of the West then retrieving and rebuilding as per the wise directive of Mr. Gerald Nye from North Dakota during the time of the Second World War. Or then, we can understand this factor as not truly a prophecy from a prophet, but he was speaking words not from his time, but for this time. Where then what he said precisely, he said then America first must then take care of its own situations, and then obviously the arms industry, then this country leading its interests first and then coming against the arms factories. Obviously, this would take a government with a proper view of our own position, because we understand our country is depleted of resources and we are spending our future, where then there is roughly 30 months until whatsoever then IMF has stated as far as our situation of our own money or our own monetary system then would be obviously ruined. And then, as we understand, the Chinese system is already uploaded. And then the G20 on September is going to give us more understandings of the initiation of the BRICS monetary system, giving us then the understanding of the future virtual dragon's monetary system. That's the section then obviously lacking at the moment, but then we find the physical areas of trade of the dragon already making itself very vivid, such as then Cancun. Very wise then the Mexican government has then made a great deal of partnership where then they became the trading post of the Central America. So then let's understand from the point of view of trade. The dragon, for instance, can't extend himself so far as the tip of South America. This was then obviously wishful thinking from this great project of Central America. But then, understandably, we find then the importance of a trading post in the South Pacific, obviously Australia. Then we find obviously Brazil being then another place where then the Dragon Mart can be at. For instance, South Brazil is very important. There is then the largest port of Brazil in Paraná, where then there's lots of land, lots of nice space, very inexpensive. There is then the set of mountains over there with a great deal of tourism from the main plain up on top. Then the industrial area is then 60 miles away from this site, providing them with the proper specialized then labor. So then these great Dragon Mart can be then obviously being part of the local economy. And then not only this, because of the many areas of the northern side where then mine is going to be absolutely important, then we can find the movements of ships from north to south. As then the post-Panamax ships from China, they come and deliver the load. So then lots of excitement, understandings, and also the flow of events of this time of the end as per the instructions, where you find then the Messiah from tabernacling mentioning, and the freighters of the earth, the freighters of the earth. He said many times, and the freighters of the earth. The situation is, those instructions, they were not layered properly. Then the translators, they were ignorant of the formation of those layers, so then we would have our minds properly layered. So for instance, you find chapter 1:8 of Galah does not belong in Galah. It belongs during the time of the restoration period. You find then sections of then the later chapters of Revelation, those don't belong with Galah or Revelation. Those are post-autumn feast, linking up with then Yirmiyahu the 65th and 6th chapter. Yirmiyahu the 65th and 6th then give us the future understanding of the new capital of Jerusalem, when then the Creator Himself is then back in charge. So then gives us then obviously the importance of refurbishing the instructions and then put them together layered properly as Yohanan did when he was in the first holy city. There are steps of formation where then we must gather the existing Megillas, or then those important manuscripts of the time of the transition. A person has to be real naive thinking then the Greco-Roman translation would then place Yohanan on the island where he was exiled by the emperor, and then they think from there, because of some sort of a God-led understanding, then would have a boat over there at the prison, then delivering documents, and then enticing the people, very contrary of what then the emperor set him there for. It is truly ridiculous type of a piece of instruction where then Yohanan was on the island of Patmos. Where did you get this from? He was sentenced there by the emperor himself. How could he write from there and have a boat delivery of his own writings against the order of the emperor? So the whole Patmos deal is absolutely a novel. Yohanan was in the first holy city because he was teaching during the time of the reign of the Messiah as the king of the Holy of Holies. Obviously, Yohanan would gather the transitional time documents and would then refine them, layer them properly, and then those 7 cities that were in sin in Asia Minor were then straightened out. Thus then starting of the time of the holy cities until 1009. So at the moment Yohanan then completed his work, and then the people went out to give those documents then to those cities in sin, then Hashatan became instantly the destroyer. Thus then he began his plan of destroying the holy cities. So then you find obviously Yohanan teaching those people via those documents, where then until roughly around the 10th chapter, because you can't go by number, you have to understand the layer of it. When Yohanan came out by the order of the angel, he said, "You must yet go amongst the nations and prophesy what you have learned during the time where you were then obviously in the holy city, preparing those documents, straightening out those 7 cities in Asia Minor. Then you have to go out and mentioning what's coming." As he did, then the emperor of the time was then afraid. Back then, the emperor thought any person with divine powers could come and take the throne away. They had no idea, the emperor had no idea that this person couldn't do it. That's why he was exiled. From there, he never wrote. It's obvious. So then, afterwards, then Yohanan died on the island of Patmos. He never came out of it. How he could come out of an island where he was in exile by the mandate of the emperor and he come out of there? No, back then, the emperor said this person is exiled for life. Stayed over there for life. And he did. But then the cities were straightened out by then, and they continue on, then, obviously, constructing more holy cities. Then Ahashatan was the facet of a destroyer. His aim was to destroy the holy cities. And he did until reached 1009. From then on, then the world had no directive. That's a new world order. So the Bilderberg group, if you study where these scoundrels comes from, you find it. It's around 1009. Because the world had no directive. So had to have a group of scoundrels and liars to get at least some sort of an order in this planet. Until 2009. After 2009, they are dismantled. There is no reason for these scoundrels. So then we are back on a holy schedule. So then we find the designers of this time of the restoration period, namely then the east, north, and south, as per instructions of Daniel the 11th chapter, and a couple of chapters later. Then you find then the dragon and Baal then having a war against each other. Then you find, obviously during this time, as human nature always teaches, then the West is trying then to make its own statue of gold. Where do you get this from? Second chapter of Daniel. Did he not say would have then a statue, and then the statue would have each section of it with another type of metal? But then king of Babylon, he thought, oh, let me try to make my kingdom then eternal. That's what he thought. Because he was so secure of his own position, let's make a statue of gold and make people then worship. But didn't work, did it? So then, the West is trying to make a statue of gold for itself. Watch then the instructions. The 11th chapter states, then the kingdom of the north, kingdom of the south. A couple of chapters later you find kingdom of the east, the dragon. How can they go against the dragon? Let me ask you this. The dragon comes from China. The dragon has its own designers, north, south, and east, and then the rest of us work. We must rebuild and retrieve, so then dragon can do his work. But then we find the West is trying over the stretching, over the extending. It's not going to work. Be sure of it. The king of Babylon was a whole lot more important than our own country. Babylon was around for a long time. Every plan of the West on trying to control the world is not going to work. The only section that works if we retrieve and rebuild, and then understand what Gerald Nye has said during the time of the Second World War. His words were absolutely precise. Obviously then, retrieving from every war, and then set up a war, in quote, against the arms factory of this country. Making sure they are humbled and then invest in our own country, America first. And let the designers deal with the rest of the problems, because they have the proper resources. They have the proper management. That's why China has a vast military for this purpose. And what an honor, what a great benefit for us, able to retrieve and rebuild our own country. But then the leaders and the scoundrels of this country, no, they want to invest more in someplace else. They don't have the idea of our people are then lacking jobs, infrastructure, lack of energy. Oh, they want a name for themselves. They are around the world making deals. These scoundrels are politicians going around spending thousands upon thousands, 500,000 for a night. And then the people, they don't have enough jobs. They want to make a name for themselves. And then we find the 11th chapter of Daniel giving us then absolutely precise understanding of the designers north, east, and south. Then you find a couple of chapters later the understanding of it. So America then unfortunately is trying to make a statue of gold for itself. It's not going to work. So let's evaluate what we are doing, because coming against the Creator himself is extremely dangerous. He never made a mistake before, and he won't do it. So the best then is do what the prophet said to do. At the moment, we don't find the West on the 11th chapter of Daniel. You don't find the West a couple of chapters later, or any place regarding the time of the restoration on the instructions of Daniel. We don't find the West. This means retrieve. This means rebuild like anyone else. Other countries, France, Germany, Australia, being aware of who they are and where they play during this time of the restoration period, but not as designers. Not regarding the plan of the dragon. They work amongst themselves to make sure they are worthy for joining up then as partners when the trade of the end is established, but not being part of the designing of it. And as far as country, for instance, as America, trying then to force their way over and trying to gain, for instance, this president of Egypt over there, he was then set up by the West. That's why the people very wisely deposed, and then they want somebody else. Obviously, a person linked up with China would be the wisest, because then provides them with materials required to do and rebuild their country as they wish, making then their country stable as per their wishes, not Western wishes. And they should maintain their positions and get what they want outside of the West's grasp. And if it doesn't get done as per the majority of the people, then the army takes over until they get what they want. And America should rebuild and retrieve as per the instructions. So then, the G20 in September is extremely important, where nations then are coming and then giving their plans and their partnerships, what they can do to make sure then the BRICS system is then active. Thus far, then, the physical area of Central America is already taken. Mexico very wisely became the trading post. Now comes then the South Pacific and many other areas around the world. So then, the physical areas of distribution centers are then set. Thus, then you begin to understand what the Messiah said in the freighters of the earth. He saw ships everywhere. Well, of course, the dragon is coming, and he's the wisest in this world other than tabernacling. Then you find ships everywhere, distribution centers. And not only this, you find then the computerized dragon system, where people can do trade 24/7 as much as they want. So the world is truly preparing for this time. And the West, no question, absolutely must retrieve as per the instructions and do what Mr. Nye has said a long time ago. Retrieve and rebuild. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.